The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to our webinar. We are going to be talking about the best practices for deploying Android Enterprise with Citrix Endpoint Management. There are three presenters joining us today: Jonathan Campus, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Citrix; Chetan Thacker, Senior Product Manager for Android at Citrix; and Corey Campbell, Android Enterprise Platform Specialist from Google. We also have Jerome LeBon, Senior Technical Marketing Manager from Citrix, joining us as a panelist at the end. We are going to be covering today topics such as the newest features of Android Enterprise, the latest enrollment modes, migrating from device administrator to Android Enterprise policies, as well as many other things. This webinar also includes live Q&A for all our speakers at the ends, and you can submit your questions at any time using the questions pane of the control panel on your right. So with that, I will now hand over to Corey from Google.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining. As mentioned today, we want to talk about best practices for deploying the modern Android management stack, which we call Android Enterprise. I think to start out, though, I'd like to just start with a bit of history and talk about why we've made some of the decisions that we have made to kind of move to this modern stack with Android Enterprise. So in Android 2.2, we released what was called, or we introduced what was called device administrator APIs. This was a set of APIs that allowed applications to gain some additional controls over devices that they didn't necessarily have. But from a Google perspective, it wasn't really meant to be a full-on management stack, if you will. But for lack of kind of better APIs available and things like that, our partners such as Citrix built into those device administrator APIs to provide customers like yourselves the capability to manage their Android devices. But we saw a number of challenges that came about with device administrator, like I mentioned, because it wasn't necessarily built for the purpose of being a management stack. So in Android Lollipop, we introduced Android Enterprise, the idea being that this is a set of APIs that is purely built for the enterprise, that is meant for enterprise management to hopefully address not only the challenges that we're seeing in device administrator, but also to introduce new functionality and new security controls for our customers that are looking to manage and secure their Android devices. And since then, we've actually added additional features, additional security, additional things with each release of Android, and we'll continue to do that moving forward into upcoming Android releases. So as I mentioned, with device administrator, there were a number of challenges that we noticed as our customers started using those APIs and those features for device management. Some challenges around identity. So there was really no enterprise-grade account management built into device administrator. It was you needed a Google account to onboard devices a lot of times, and we saw instances where customers were either manage or allowing their employees to put personal Google accounts or to register those devices with personal Google accounts just to get them onboarding into EMM, or they had like a spreadsheet of accounts that they were managing to use to enroll and onboard these devices, which of course, as you can understand, it's tough to scale and tough to manage. There were some challenges around permissions. So how do you handle application permissions for individual applications that you're deploying to the devices, as well as just DA permissions in general? When an application requests for device admin permissions, it was really kind of a one-size-fits-all. There was no way to only restrict and only allow certain permissions for a device administrator application. It really kind of had full control over the device, which actually had some security implications to that as well. There were some challenges around device provisioning. So as I already mentioned, kind of one of the friction points around accounts and getting access to Google Play and being able to push applications, but also when you factor in the provisioning side of things, that means that in a lot of cases you would need a Google account in order to get access to your agent, right, in order to start the enrollment process of the device. And then there's always the kind of big fragmentation word on Android, and we wanted to make sure that we kind of dispelled or got rid of some of the inconsistencies across OEMs and OS versions. And so, you know, again, building this kind of stack of Android Enterprise, the goal being that you should have a consistent set of features, a consistent experience from a base level across your different OEMs and different OS versions. So we've built this, as I mentioned, with Android Enterprise, and that was introduced in Android Lollipop 5.0 or 5.1. And we believe that we've gotten to a point where we're actually now ready to deprecate Device Administrator as a management stack within Android. And we've started that, and I'll talk a little bit about the details of what specific things are going away. You know, the reasons why that, you know, we wanted to deprecate Device Administrator, not only the challenges that I mentioned in the last slide, but also, you know, an outdated security model. Android Enterprise has a much better security model because of some of the challenges I mentioned with Device Administrator, privileges and permissions. There was chances for malware abuse, and again, making sure that we just have a consistent API set across devices. So with Android Enterprise, we avoid that duplication of effort with that consistent set. We hope that we've made kind of a clear and consistent set of policies and understanding with the ecosystem, whether it pertains to our EMM partners, our OEM partners, and our customers. Of course, that'll be the management stack that we support from an ongoing perspective, and any new features that we build as it pertains to the enterprise will all be built into the Android Enterprise stack. I mentioned that Android Enterprise has a better security model, and Android in general, the way that we think about security is kind of this layered stack, and there are things that we do at each step of the layer to ensure that we're securing devices, not only for consumers that are just, you know, out there buying Android devices, but also for our enterprise customers. So whether you're talking about from a hardware level with requirement of a trusted execution environment in hardware, with support for secure hardware elements like the Knox hardware chip on Samsung devices or the Titan M chip on Pixel devices. Those are things that kind of build into that hardware level layer to ensure that we're securing those Android devices. There's of course things that we do at the OS level. Whether you're talking about things during the boot process and checking each step of the way of when the device is booted up until it gets to the OS, a process we call verified boot, things that we're doing to ensure that the kernel hasn't been tampered with, as well as just things that the end user would see, so pin pattern password, biometric support for unlocking and securing the device and encrypting the device. And then on top of that, you know, we have our application security strategy through Google Play Protect, where every application that is on an Android device running Google Play, so that is applications that are uploaded to the Play Store to be deployed, even applications that are side-loaded to devices, are scanned by Google Play Protect, and we're able to make a decision as to whether or not we believe that app is what we call a potentially harmful application. The nice thing about this is what Google categorizes as a potentially harmful app could be everything from, on one end of the spectrum, you know, malware, ransomware, malicious types of applications, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where it may be poor coding practices. The developer has left credentials in clear text. They haven't properly implemented SSL within their application. And we catch all of those. And then we're able to surface that not only to the end user to prompt them to say, hey, you know, this has been detected as a potentially harmful application. Are you sure you'd want to install it? But we are also able to allow our EMM partners like Citrix to query the device to say, hey, have you scanned, have you done a Play Protect scan in some time? If so, what are the applications that have been detected as potentially harmful, if any? And then you could take action on those devices. So constantly ensuring that the applications on those devices are secure. And then on top of that, there's the management stack of APIs that we allow our EMM partners to tie into to further control, configure, and secure those devices. I like to show this just because, and this was pulled from a video we did with Gartner last year, and the latest report has actually been updated and shows very similar results. But it's all kind of well and good for Google to say that, hey, Android is secure, but I think that we're starting to see, and we have been seeing actually, the same verification from the ecosystem. So in last year's Gartner report, Android scored the highest rating in 26 out of 30 categories. Pixel was the highest rated device in built-in security, and actually Pixel and Samsung devices tied for overall security, where I think Pixel was rated higher in one category and Samsung was rated higher in another category. So this just shows that the things that we're doing at an Android level, it's being recognized by not only analysts like Gartner and Forrester, but there's also white hat hacker conferences like the Mobile Phone to Own conference that are showing that it's very difficult to actually compromise an Android device, and a lot of that is because of the built-in security that comes with Android. And then again, you layer on the management security that you would get from your EMM like Citrix and the things that they can control with APIs, and it makes for a very good security story, and make sure that you can have the confidence that your devices and your corporate data is secure. From a management perspective, just to talk a little bit about the reason why we believe that it's beneficial for customers to move into using the modern stack with Android Enterprise as opposed to the legacy stack with the device administrator. I'll touch on a few different differences in a few different areas, but really with device administrator, there was very little flexibility in management options. It was really a one-size-fits-all. Once your application was a device administrator, it was full control, and there's no in between, there's no other options. Whereas with Android Enterprise, we allow for a number of different options, whether you're talking about BYOD with the work profile. We also have a number of options for corporate liable devices, for fully managed, with a locked task mode and kiosk types of devices, and then what we call work profile on a fully managed device. And you can see here, I like to think of this as kind of left to right is level of control as you go through the different options for how to configure the device. And actually right to left is kind of level of user privacy. So on the left-hand side, we have our BYOD offering with the work profile, where at the platform layer, it is impossible for an EMM, for an IT administrator to see the personal side of the device. They only have control over the work side of the device, so you can fully secure, separately encrypt, fully control what applications, what settings, what things a user is able to see and do on their work side of the device, or what we call the work profile. But you can still guarantee that end user privacy for your users so that they know that you're not able to see or control anything that's on that personal side of the device, so that they can truly have that work device and personal device in a single hardware form factor. To the right of that, we have our three corporate liable kind of offerings. I'll start all the way on the right with our dedicated device. This is more for those kiosk type of devices, locked into either a single application or locked into a subset of applications where these are very restricted. Users aren't necessarily going to notifications, or you don't want them going to settings. They have a single purpose, right? And these devices are locked into that single purpose. Just to the left of that, we have our work only or fully managed device mode, which is a fully controlled device. There is no personal side of the device, and you're able to fully control what the user is able to see, get access to play, what applications they can download, what settings they can get to, what things they're able to see and do. It's less restrictive than that locked task mode. So this is typically your knowledge worker type of the device, where it's a corporate only asset, but they're still using it as a smart device or smartphone. And then just to the left of that is our fully managed device with the work profile. This is kind of a unique offering where it allows you to have full control over the device, but still gives the end user the benefit of the user privacy. So these are scenarios where it's a corporate liable asset, so it's not a BYOD type of scenario. So you still want to be able to do things like factory reset the device. You may want to, GPS locate that device, but you do want to give the user the ability to use and download personal applications on that device. So you still get that separation of work and personal, and you still get kind of full control of the device, but you do not have some of the visibility on the personal side of the device because of that separation of the work and personal with the work profile. So as I mentioned with the work profile, just to show you a bit about kind of what the view looks like, you have your personal applications, which are these unbadged applications, as you can see in here in the example of Google Drive. And then you have your badged applications that are your work apps. It's important to note that this is not two copies of the same application. We're not duplicating APKs, so we're not doubling up the storage on the device. This is a single application. There's just two different spaces where the user data is stored, one space for the personal user data, one space for the work user data. And of course, like I mentioned, those things are and can be separately encrypted. Gives you that clear boundary between work and personal from a UI experience, so employees are very easy to differentiate what things their work can see and control versus what things are not visible to their employer. And then from an OS level, again, gives you the ability to fully control all of your work settings, as well as the security around the work applications and data that you have going down to that work profile. From a provisioning perspective, again, the enrollment options that were available for device administrator were fairly rigid. You had to typically get the agent on the device right in order to enroll the device, which meant you were either sideloading the devices, or sideloading the application, so installing that app from a quote-unquote unknown source, which has some security risks, or you were doing like a barcode scanning for some OEMs, so there wasn't a consistent experience like across device types. Whereas with Android Enterprise, we have a number of different options for enrolling into Android Enterprise, none of which require a Google account be present on the device prior to setup. Of course, if it's a BYOD type of device, the user would already have their account set up. They could go to the Google Play Store, download the Citrix client, and then enroll via that client. From a corporate liable device, there are a few different options as it pertains to enrollment. Of course, there is the QR code. So if you're not aware, on an Android device, once you start it up for the first time, if you tap 6 times anywhere on that screen, it'll pull up a QR code reader. If it's a Android 9 Pi device or newer, the QR code reader is actually bundled in the OS. If it's an older device than that, it'll actually need to connect to a network to download a QR code reader. But you get that QR code reader, and then you can scan a barcode, which will then go out, download your EMM client, and again, they'll allow you to enroll. We support NFC, so you could take an NFC tag and bump devices, right, which would do the same thing, allow it to connect to a network, and then download the agent to enroll. DPC identifier, there is a code that you're able to put in at the startup screen. So basically, when you're starting an Android device for the first time, you would get to the point where it asks you typically for your Gmail account. And on that screen, you can just type in AFW hashtag and then the code for your EMM, for Citrix in this case. And then that would go out and download the agent and allow you to enroll the device. As I mentioned, all of these methods are kind of kicked off at startup, so the first time you start up that Android device, so they don't require that you have a Google account present on that device in order to download the agent to kick off the enrollment process. And then last but certainly not least, we have our zero-touch enrollment process, which allows you to have a portal that you can, or a reseller really, can upload the IMEI numbers or serial numbers for devices that you have purchased from them. And then this allows you to point those devices at your Citrix environment, and enroll those devices. So once those devices come online, as you're seeing here kind of in this image, it would connect to the network, whether it's Wi-Fi or cellular. It would detect, okay, this device is supposed to be under management, and then it would download your EMM client for you to enroll the process. So this simplifies that provisioning process. You could actually ship devices directly to the employees. There's nothing they need to do in order to start that process other than connecting to the network, right? And then the system automatically gets them enrolled or started in the enrollment process. The nice thing about this is this also provides a great security measure for keeping the device under management. So even if the device was factory reset, it would be automatically kicked back into that enrollment flow. From an applications perspective, one of the issues with Device Administrator was there was no tie-in to Google Play. So kind of very difficult when you talk about deploying public applications onto a device that was Device Administrator managed, as well as typically from a security perspective, if you wanted things to work, with the security of a container or something like that, it would require some sort of app wrapping. With Android Enterprise, we've of course built in integration into Google Play with what we call the Managed Google Play Store, which allows you to silently install public and private applications. So if you're developing your own applications, you can deploy those through the Managed Google Play Store as well. Not only do you get the full benefit of the the Google Play cache around the world, but you also don't have to worry about doing app wrapping. Of course, any device or any applications deployed through that get the full security of the devices. You can accept application permissions on behalf of the end users and set rules as to what happens when an app requires new applications. You can also specify things like alpha, beta channels for your private applications. As I mentioned, our app scanning looks for poor coding practices as well. So you can kind of double check or shore up your development practices with our app scanning. You can take advantage of our Delta updates through the Play updates. So anytime you made an update to an application, you push it out. It actually doesn't push out the full APK. It actually looks at the Delta and it only pushes that. So from a bandwidth and speed perspective, you get a lot of benefit there. Managed configurations is something that we've introduced with the Managed Play Store. This allows you to actually push configurations down through Managed Google Play to those applications that are on the device. What this means is it's a simpler setup process for your end users. For applications that support managed configs, they no longer need to manually set those up when they're onboarding their device. And this allows you to really quickly speed up that configuration and choose kind of which things you're pushing down to those devices. There's no user interaction that's required. Once you go into the Managed Play Store, there's a tag that shows which applications support managed configs. Those applications are actually dynamically, the configs for those are dynamically loaded into your EMM console. And so the other nice thing about that is there's no change that an EMM has to do in order to support any new configurations within an application. It's all very dynamic. So once the app is updated with new configurations options, you will see that within your EMM console. So those are the reasons we think it's good to adopt Android Enterprise over Device Administrator. I mean, all those benefits that we've kind of built into the device management options, the provisioning options, as well as the application management, and addressing a lot of the concerns and challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. So with that, we announced back in December 2017 that we're deprecating Device Administrator. The APIs that I'll talk about here in a second were marked as deprecated in Android 9, and then they were actually fully removed in Android 10. So any devices that are running Android 10 or would be upgraded to Android 10, once your EMM agent is upgraded to the API level that matches Android 10, so this API level 29, those APIs will stop working. And for anyone who has questions around what those APIs are, the individual ones are listed on our website. But it basically boils down to passcode policies. So you wouldn't be able to require a passcode or set the complexity of a passcode in Device Administrator on Android 10. You no longer can restrict key guard settings and camera. So blocking the camera or setting settings around your lock screen and key guard are removed in Android 10. And then you will not be able to restrict the user from removing Device Administrator privileges from the application. So again, those APIs are going away, so that's one reason to get off Device Administrator. But of course, the main reason is all of the benefits that I talked about in the first half with the things that we've built into Android Enterprise. So really quickly, I just want to go over, now that we've talked about the benefits of Android Enterprise, what are some best practices that we have in actually migrating over to Android Enterprise from Device Administrator if you've already got devices that are running under Device Administrator. The first thing that you want to do is analyze your existing environment. So take a look at the settings that you're using on those devices, take a look at any security requirements you have, any functionality requirements you have, what are the applications that you're deploying to your devices, what are the OS versions that those devices are running and manufacturers that are running, and document and map those things to what you will be doing in your Android Enterprise environment. So all of those security and functionality and feature set requirements, you can set those things up within your Android Enterprise environment. You can take a look at any features that may have not been supported in Device Administrator that you actually want to applications, as I mentioned, that you're using, and make sure that you're deploying those things within your Android Enterprise setup. From a device selection perspective, we've actually hopefully made it a little easier on our customers for knowing what devices to choose that will support Android Enterprise. We have launched what we call the Android Enterprise Recommended program, and for devices, and what this allows you to do is go on our website and see a list of devices that have met a elevated level of security and an elevated level of functionality that will support all of the Android Enterprise features, things like zero touch. They have to support no greater than 90-day security patches, and then there's a number of features that we require. So you can have confidence that any device that is on that Android Enterprise Recommended program list will fully support all the features and functionalities and APIs that I set, that I mentioned earlier, and that they will also get updated regularly, as well as be able to use zero-touch enrollment. Once you have all those requirements mapped, you'll want to get into your POC, right? Test this out. Choose a set of testers that are maybe very vocal and also can handle change very well, so that you can get feedback from them and document that. This is also where you want to start creating some of your user documentation that you'll use in the next stage to make it easier on your end users that are getting over to Android Enterprise. And this is where you maybe test and see those things that you may have thought about, you may not have thought about during the requirements mapping stage, and where you can make things a little cleaner in terms of your settings and deployments and things like that. And then of course in your fourth stage, you want to deploy. We of course don't necessarily recommend that customers would go with like what we call a big bang deployment. So you rip out all of your Device Administrator devices and you install all your Android Enterprise devices. It may be more of a cap and grow, right? You don't affect any devices that are already enrolled, but any new devices that you're getting into your system, you make sure those new devices are on Android Enterprise. And then as your older devices kind of phase out, become end of life, and you're refreshing devices to your end users, you make sure that those refreshed devices get on Android Enterprise as well. So that way you're able to kind of navigate away from those devices over time. And as I mentioned, as long as the device is not running Android 10 or will not be upgraded to Android 10, then it won't be affected by the APIs that we're removing from Device Administrator. So, lastly, hopefully this was all informative in terms of what are the benefits of Android Enterprise, as well as what we recommend in getting over to Android Enterprise. I would definitely say to start now, as we talked about these APIs go away in Android 10, which has already been released, and shortly this year the Citrix client will need to be upgraded to support the API level 29. So prior to that kind of cutoff, you want to make sure that you are planning and executing your migration plans for getting over to Android Enterprise. Work with Citrix to develop that plan. They can also bring in myself or some of my colleagues from Google to help out as needed. And as I mentioned in the best practices, create detailed user documentations. We understand that change can be difficult no matter what kind of change it is, and really good user documentation and user resources goes a long way with making it easier for setting up for this kind of new world and this new modern management stack for Android. So with that, I'll actually hand it over to Chetan and Jonathan for the rest of the presentation.
Thanks so much, Corey. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for the great presentation. So we hope that everyone's doing great so far. Chetan and I have a couple of updates with regards to Citrix, and we're just going to go ahead and switch things over. Thanks so much, Corey, again. So hi, everyone. As Corey alluded to, my name is Jonathan Campos, and I'm going to just switch things up here. Just 1 second. We do apologize while we get things ready for the webinar. And we'll start this slideshow from the start here. And just switch the display. Swap that out. All right, that looks so much better. Perfect. So as Corey mentioned, my name is Jonathan Campos. I'm here alongside with my colleague Chetan Thacker, and we're both focused on the product side here with Citrix. And we have some updates directly from Citrix regarding Android Enterprise. Starting with just a small statement here that this is a forward-looking indication of plans for products, and it is preliminary, and all future release dates are tentative and subject to change. It's something that we want to just kind of let you guys know, because we are going to be talking about some newer features that we are going to be supporting in the Android Enterprise platform. Starting with maximizing mobile productivity. So as you guys know, you have been working with Citrix for some time. You should be aware of the great functionality of Citrix Workspace. And Citrix Workspace, working hand in hand with Citrix Endpoint Management, really focuses on having a unified workspace and focuses on the best user experience. And really the goal, what we're trying to do here with Citrix Workspace hand in hand with Android Enterprise, is really increasing mobile productivity. And we want to focus on having that best user experience. With Citrix Endpoint Management, we have the ability of enrolling and registering the device, unifying your app stores, single sign-on with mobile apps, feeding Citrix Analytics, and providing you with a zero trust workspace that really gives your end users the ability of really having the best mobile productivity, right? So we want to emphasize again what Corey mentioned in his presentation of what's happening with Android 10. And we're really focusing on this application and device configuration component of Citrix Workspace, and emphasizing to our community, to our user community that's leveraging Citrix Endpoint Management, that device admin APIs are being deprecated. And we are going to have some issues with certain level APIs, or sorry, with certain APIs such as disable camera, disable key guard features, as well as expire password and limit password on devices running Android Q once the DPC, which is of course Secure Hub, is upgraded. So I'm going to pass things over to Chetan, where he's going to talk about a little bit about if you're still on device administrator APIs and kind of about the migration process.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Corey, as well. So let me just take you through, let me give you some recommendations as you take this journey from device administrator to Android Enterprise, utilizing Citrix Endpoint Management, right? So as Corey was mentioning, there are different aspects of what you need to do as you make this migration move. And the thing is that the first thing that we advise our customers is evaluate Android Enterprise on Citrix Endpoint Management. And one of the very common questions that I get back is, hey, I'm already running DA. I don't want to mess around with my devices that are running on DA by switching on AE. Well, that is false. You can have AE and DA run in parallel on the same instance. You just have to make sure that you are choosing the devices that you want to run on AE and the devices that you want to run on DA. We have been sending you multiple communications around Android Enterprise as default, where we have stated that you should be, if you want your devices on device administrator, make sure you select the enrollment profile equals to legacy device administrator mode, right? So, just to show you guys how simple it is to just configure AE, right? As you log in into your cloud platform, you go into settings and you go to Android Enterprise, you will see a page come up where you will log in with your Google account, right? Once you go there, of course, there are certain questions that you need to answer about your company and the representative who is going to be owning that account. Either it's a data protection officer or the EU representative. Once you enter that information, and then what happens is, these APIs between SEM and Google are connected, and here you go and you're set with Android Enterprise. And what you will see is you will see org ID created for you. That org ID is something that connects you and Android Enterprise, right? So now you guys have moved from the first step. You've evaluated it. You've set up Android Enterprise. Now you're going to determine what is your use case, right? So, are you a BYOD workshop where you have your users bringing in their devices? Work profile makes sense for you. Are you a corporate owned where you are providing devices? You want more control over your devices? Fully managed mode makes sense over there. Or you have dedicated devices, which is kiosks. Then the kiosk mode makes sense over there, right? Or if you have all three, no worries. In Citrix, we support all these different modes that are currently provided with Android Enterprise, right? Whether it's work profile, whether it's a fully managed device, whether it's a dedicated device, which is kiosk, or the latest one that we got in was a fully managed device with work profile, which is where it's a fully managed device, but a work profile is created to separate personal and work. So let's start with work profile, right? So here, I think so Corey also alluded to this, but it is important for you to understand what the look and feel of work profile is, because your end users are not used to seeing these badge icons when they're in DA or a separate profile created for you, right? Especially if your users are on an older Android version, you might just see a folder, which is called the work folder, versus on newer Android versions, you will see a complete separation between tabs as work and personal, right? So it's important for you to understand how that look and feel is. Also important for you to understand that how you can now control the applications that you make available to your end users using Managed Play, right? And when your end user is enrolling into work profile, it is pretty simple, right? The user just gets Secure Hub, enrolls, logs in, a work profile is created on a device. They will only see applications that have been pushed on the device, as well as all the policies that you've selected, right? The best part about this one is, and I hear that from a lot of end users saying, hey, I don't want to enroll my device, right? I don't know what can my admin see when I'm using it for personal purposes. So this gives you the perfect balance between security of securing your work data, as well as user privacy, because it's completely separate work apps from personal, right? There's one thing that this mode does require is you require to re-enroll. But here at Citrix, we understand that re-enroll or re-enrolling a device is a huge pain point for most of the admins. So what are we doing is we are doing and upcoming with a feature that will enable you guys to migrate to Android Enterprise without the need to re-enroll. And again, this is a future statement, a feature that is coming out soon. Here, the admins will be able to select the list of devices that they want to migrate, right? The end user gets a notification. The notification says, hey, you have to upgrade to Android Enterprise. Again, it just depends. You are currently presenting. You don't want to do it right now. you can always select not now, or you can continue with the upgrade. Also, we're adding another feature where you as an admin can actually put in the number of days, right? So you want the user to migrate within 10 days, then that, their time ticker will start clicking in from the time they get the notification, right? So let's say if the user accepts to upgrade, the device, they'll get some notification saying, hey, you're going to separate work from personal. So they already have an idea of what's going to happen to their device. And once all that is done, they're successfully migrated to work profile, and now they will see the work and personal separation. So that's a user experience, which is pretty slick. But at the same time, we want to make sure that our admins can also manage what devices have been moved versus what devices are still not there, like the ones that are using the not now. And this is also a feature that is going to come out soon. And this will help the admins monitor how many devices have been moved versus how many devices still need to be moved, just in case if you want to nudge a particular person to go and start the migration. All right, so let's now move on to fully managed, right? So, at Citrix, we support all the methods that are out there to provision the devices, whether it's, AFW Zen Mobile, which we call your EMM token, whether it's QR code, NFC, or zero touch, right? All these ones are supported. And, when you look at the fully managed device, I mean, the video shows a QR code enrollment method. It's pretty slick and fast. So either you can, choose any of those methods. For example, in this QR code, you can just put a QR code, print out somewhere, or and then the users can go and scan the QR code, and the device will be enrolled in a fully managed mode. Here, the biggest difference is that the admin controls the device itself. Some of the examples are in the work profile, you can only selectively wipe the work profile, versus here you can fully wipe the device, right? So there are certain controls that are there that you get with a fully managed device. And this one, a key to note down over here, that this is kind of a platform requirement where you need to factory reset the device before you migrate from DA, right? So if you have any devices currently that are in DA mode and they're corporate owned and you want to move to a fully managed mode, then you have to factory reset those. All right, so once you guys have done that, now you've determined what your use case is. Now the next step is to see how, as an admin, you are going to configure these policies or do the app management, and especially the manage play experience, right? So let's start with all the device policies, right? So just one thing that to note is we have a platform, which is Android Enterprise, as you can see highlighted over there. Make sure you select that as your platform, and you have a whole list of policies out there. It's great to mention that Citrix Endpoint Management supports all the standard and most of the advanced feature sets that come with Android Enterprise, right? So even if you look at just, our restriction policy, we have over 90 restrictions out there where you can, enable, disable camera, screenshots, copy paste, etc., along with a whole bunch of Samsung APIs or Knox APIs as well. So, just to let you know how we've been moving on Android Enterprise. So we have, in the last few months, we have been adding a lot of features on Android Enterprise, which are most of the advanced feature sets, right? So all the way from security, where you have functionality like advanced VPN control, you have key guard management, certificate management, to also supporting something that Corey mentioned, which was OEM config, where we support Samsung as well as Zebra devices, right? And when it comes to an admin experience, right, we've added new functionality where, you don't have to go to manage play to approve an app. You can do it from within the context of your EMM console. We allow web apps, we allow all apps in manage play. Also, a feature that we have recently come up with, which is scope mode, which is fully managed device with work profile. So a whole bunch of features have been added, and they're going to be added even more as we move forward. Now, when it comes to your apps, right, there are different kind of apps that you have in your portfolio of apps, if I could call it that way, right? Some of them are public available readily on the App Store. For example, that could be your Chrome application, right? So here the steps are pretty simple. You make sure you select apps, you choose the Android Enterprise platform. All you will do is type in Chrome, and the Manage Play window now has been integrated within the EMM console or SEM console, and you don't need to go out of it, right? It will show you all the apps that are related to Chrome, just like you do in your Play Store. You select Chrome, you approve the app right then and there. Once the app is approved, you can go select it and provide it to the users that you want to publish or deliver this app to. Now, this is specifically to, Citrix users where you have a whole bunch of MDX apps. So in this scenario, again, you will select Android Enterprise as your platform, select MDX as the app. You will upload the MDX file, and we know from the MDX file what is the package name of the app that you are wanting to publish. So in this case, if it's secure mail, and if you haven't approved it, then you will see a window to approve it right then and there, and then you follow the same process of publishing the app and putting out the MDX policies all within one flow. And finally, this is something which has been also recently added, is enterprise or private apps, right? If you compare it to how it was before you had to create a Google administrator or developer account, pay $25, put your APK out there, fill out a big form, wait for a few days for the app to be available for you to be published, for it to be published, right? But in this case, what we have done is we've integrated the private apps flow within our EMM console. So it just simplifies it. You just select private or enterprise apps, put in your APK. There are certain checks that are done that this package name already does not exist or it's been compiled correctly. Once that is done, then approximately within 10 minutes or so, the app is approved and you can go and publish that private app to the list of users that you want to. And no $25, no developer account needed over here. All right. So with that, you have done one of the main, the few key things to move that needle from DA to AE. You have evaluated it. You have determined your use case. You have evaluated the AE policies that are currently available on Citrix, how the app management works, how are you going to publish these apps, and just make sure that when you do that, please select the Android Enterprise platform, because a lot of times the mistake is done that because you're so used to using Android as a platform, you just select Android, right? And that could lead to issues later on. So please make sure that you select the Android Enterprise platform. Now you have evaluated the solution in Citrix with Android Enterprise. Now it's time to move. You can start with a few admins, a few power users, and then move on to the rest of the organization. Again, as I said, you can always be parallel with AE and DA, but the time is now that you start moving your devices to Android Enterprise. And if you want to learn more about Android Enterprise, there are certain links. Again, this is thanks to our partners at Google. They have these Android Enterprise Professional, Android Enterprise Associate. A lot of our folks, whether they are in the sales team or the support team, are taking this training so that they can serve our customers better when they have any issues or any questions relating to Android Enterprise. Also, we have our tech zone. Please do visit our tech zone. There's a lot of information about Android Enterprise along with all the other Citrix technologies, which will be really good for you to know. And this will lead to you more in a technical form versus just high-level documentation. And with that, let's move on to Q&A.
So we will have a poll that's actually going to be showing on your screens, and we're going to actually move over. You'll see our quick poll. Just two quick questions that we actually have for everyone. So we'll go ahead and get started with that, and then we're going to proceed with Q&A. Please feel free to submit your questions using the GoToWebinar application, and we'll answer them accordingly.
Jonathan, would you like to read out the questions whilst we're waiting for people to vote?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or is Jerome going to be reading the questions?
Yeah, good day, everybody. We got a nice question here, and I think our PM, Shaitan, is able to quickly answer that. And this question is from Eric, and it is in regards to migrating from device admin to Android Enterprise fully managed. What are the supported methods of restoring non-corporate end user data?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, there are, I mean, I know that we have customers using, the Samsung backup for them to back up this data, and when they go back to, get the non-personal data over there for them, there is something. I mean, Cody can definitely add on, but I have used myself, some of the backup from, Google itself to do that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and this is Corey, just to add to that, Google Backup definitely is something that you can leverage if you're allowing the users to put in their Google account on that device while it's in DA, and then they can use that same account to restore once they get to AE. We do know that today, it looks like Samsung is not supporting their Samsung backup and restore capabilities with Android Enterprise. So you wouldn't be able to use Samsung backup, but of course Google Backup works on Samsung devices as well. So I think that would be the method that I would recommend.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Shaitan, for answering that. And I think we have another nice question to ask to our product manager, Shaitan. How much will be there of Android Enterprise features available on the on-premise mobile version?
Yes, so that's a very good question. So when we look at Android Enterprise, right, to me it's a new platform, right? And what we have said in our previously regarding on-prem is that we are going to be adding those as a platform, because it's a new platform, we're going to be adding those features. So if you look at Android, the latest releases that have come out, 10.11 and 10.12, which is going to come out, you will see a lot of these features that I spoke about going to be coming there. But if you ask me, of course, my recommendation is going to be like, the cloud service, the Citrix Endpoint Management service is the best option. And the reason why I say that is over a period of time, the number of on-prem releases is going to slow down, maybe 2 releases a year. And as you saw the number of features that we are putting out with Android Enterprise, those features are quickly available on the cloud first, right? So that's the limitation that you have while being on-prem, but we are definitely supporting Android Enterprise on-prem. A lot of these features will move to on-prem, but they will be at a much slower pace. There will be a point of time where we are going to stop it, but for now, at least the key, standard, and advanced features are available on-prem.
Sorry, I'm having...
So one other thing that I actually want to add to what Shaitan was saying is that, the ability of actually having the microservices that we have in the cloud, it really gives us the ability of deploying these features quickly and efficiently. One thing that a lot of our customers have asked is if we do have a migration solution from on-premise to the cloud service, and the answer to that is yes. We actually do have dedicated engineers that help our customers that are on-prem move you to the cloud. And there are some great opportunities there for customers that have an existing entitlement to move their entitlement to the cloud. And that migration service is absolutely included. So just wanted to add that as well. Thanks, Shaitan.
No, that's a great point. Absolutely a great point.
Yes, thank you. And to add to that also, if you're already using Android Enterprise on-prem and you migrate the Android Enterprise functionality, and the Citrix migration team will help you to get all these settings moved to the cloud. A question for Corey, I guess, is Android Enterprise only supported across all Android devices?
Yeah, so Android Enterprise is supported on any what we call a GMS certified device. So this is essentially typically it's any device that's running Google Play. So all of the major manufacturers, the Samsungs, Motorola's, LGs, like all those types of devices. It's an Android device that's running Android 5.0 or newer, and it has passed our GMS certification, so it has access to Play, Chrome, maps, like those types of things. Then it supports Android Enterprise. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can go to our website and see a list of devices that have been validated to support Android Enterprise, as well as the devices that are in the recommended program.
Thank you, Corey. And I think this will nicely queue up to the next question that we got in: is where is the best place to learn more about Android Enterprise? Of course, that's the Android Enterprise Academy. We have, of course, the Citrix documents where you can find all the information on migration. We have posted some links already in the chat where you can find that. Next to that, the Android Enterprise Developers Guide, or a blog where you find the feature list and the solution sets, and that will also will answer Rakib his question around, I'm trying to understand what the new Android Management API, AM API, is doing versus the old Google Play EMM. So you get a very clear overview of the features there between the Google EMM APIs and the EMM APIs. Corey, can you add a little bit more on how will it impact MDMs out there?
Sure. So the Google Play EMM API is actually the API that our EMM partners such as Citrix can use to interact with Google Play and do things like push applications and whitelist applications and those types of things, right? The Android Management API is actually something that's kind of very different. So today, how it works is each EMM has, and Chetan referenced it before as what we call a DPC, or Device Policy Controller, which just means they have their own agent on the device, right? So typically when you enroll, you go to the Play Store, you download your EMM agent to kick off the enrollment process. Well, one of the things that we've done with Google is we've thought through, well, what if we just built a generic agent that's bundled into the OS so that our EMM partners wouldn't have to necessarily keep up with developing their own agent if they didn't want to. And that's what the goal of the Android Management API is, so that they're, and this is something that a few of our EMM partners are kind of looking at and talking through if they would like to adopt. But the idea is that rather than having to develop an agent in order to kick off the enrollment, you would just have a scenario where the EMM could just reach out to this Android Management API. The API would call that generic agent on the device on its behalf. So it's less development work for our partners, and hopefully kind of quicker time to leveraging new features for customers.
Thank you, Corey and Rakipa. Hopefully this will answer your question. What else?
Hey, Jerome, if you don't mind, I'll take this question. Because it might come up and it's important. Is why is Citrix not in the list of AIA, right? So the thing is that, and Corey, as well as, other folks at Google are aware that, we are closely working with Google on the Android Enterprise recommended list, right? Every year, the Android Enterprise recommended, feature sets of programs, they're updated. And that's what we are doing, is to work on the 2020 program, which has just come right now. But the most important thing that I want to mention to folks on the call is when it comes to the features that are required to be in Android Enterprise recommended, which is a set of all standard, plus advanced feature sets. So we have all those feature sets currently available. We are currently working with Google to validate those, right? So what happens is we'll take a video, we'll give more information on that features to our Google representative. They will go through this, and then they will validate that, right? So that's what is happening right now. So it might not be in the list, but we have all the features and functionalities that is required to be there on that list. It's just a process.
Thank you, Shitan, for answering that. I saw a question from Kurt around how to deploy the secure apps from Citrix in Android Enterprise. You can find the link, and I will post it on the best practices how to deploy the Android Enterprise applications with, or even the Citrix productivity applications, MDX, with Android Enterprise and Citrix Endpoint Management. Another question: are there limitations to Android Enterprise versus device administration APIs?
I mean, go ahead, Corey.
Sorry, I was gonna. Yeah, it's. I don't know that there. So the only limitation that I guess I would point out is that for many of the Android Enterprise functionalities involving Google Play, a limitation would be areas where Play is not available. It may be tough to use Android Enterprise. So, for instance, China for work profile, which requires Google Play. You wouldn't be able to do work profile typically in China, but other than that, I don't know that there are any limitations that I would point out. Anything that you can do in DA is available with Android Enterprise. There may be some differences in how you do it and how you deploy it, but for the most part, all the use cases that would be covered in DA are covered in Android Enterprise as well.
So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry. Can I just push in one more question? So this is around again. I think so. We covered this. This is around certain devices because we have heard back from our customers that there are certain devices, especially in the Asian market, where work profile or Android Enterprise was having some issues. And I mean, the thing is that, as Corey mentioned, that those devices first check whether they are on the list as noted in the website, and also and Corey, you can add to that, but I know that Google is working with those OEMs to make sure that all of them are supporting Android Enterprise.
Okay, so as we are, I think, over time for the webinar, we'll take the moment here now to stop. But I think you can email us if you would like any more answers to the questions. We'll also be writing a follow-up blog to answer some of these questions. But thank you very much for joining us today, and we will also be sending out a recording of this webinar via email. Many thanks. I will stop the recording there. Thank you.